All right, Greg, we've got our Wrestle Dream main event. Bryan Danielson defending against Jon Moxley. Moxley beats Darby Allin to win Darby's title shot, stealing away Darby, having a chance to get a match, at least for now, against Danielson at Wrestle Dream in Washington. Would have been a cool matchup. Then we had angle afterwards with Danielson coming out, choking Moxley, not suffocating him.
Thank goodness he did. I was thinking the whole show, it's like, oh, he better come out for revenge. If they don't,
yeah, they didn't tell a story like that Danielson had to be taken away. They could have told the story, oh, after the match, he's suffering from exhaustion or dehydration or something. Right. They didn't do that. Yeah, he needed to answer that finally after at the top of the show, Ross and all the announcers were like, we haven't seen Danielson since the incident they won't speak of. It's very weird. they circumvent.
Well, they did say one time today. They did say last time we saw him, there was a bag over his head.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah.
Taz might have said, but that was the first time in 2.5 weeks that they even acknowledged it.
Yeah. And Excalibur and Shivani and I think Ross too are just like, yeah, that incident. Oh, that was awful. That those circumstances, like all these euphemisms. It's like, if you're gonna do it, own it. If you believe in it, go with it. But you know what? If they regret it, and Taz just sort of was like, screw it, I'm gonna say it. That's very Taz-like. So, Greg, your thoughts on the first Moxley and Darby, the match. We'll get to, of course, the whole show as we expand our conversation here. But the match itself, the way they told the story, Marina Shafir certainly having a role, giving Darby a bit of an out for losing. What'd you think?
Yeah, I love the match. I thought it was great, and I thought one of the things that AEW doesn't do as often is the lack of major violence for the most part of the show allowed you to make that main event stand out even more so with how violent it was and how, I mean, you knew you were going to get it with Darby anyway, but the fact that you didn't see a lot other than the FTW, which was just a little bit of, kendo stick and stuff, but the Darby bleeding from the mouth immediately, and it just, intensified from there. So I thought it was great. The storytelling was great. Darby, as you would expect, taking a ton of punishment, but still able to kick out until, finally the slight distraction was what did him in. That is what it is. But I think with the story they're telling, Mox going over is the right call.
Tell me about how you feel about the Moxley character, the reintroduction, the Shafir, Claudio, Pac, and really the follow-up. There was a lot of intrigue when Moxley came out and had his messages and sort of spoke cryptically. Have they followed up on that in a way that you think is solid, or could it be better? Yeah, talk about that.
I thought started very strong, very intriguing, very, compelling. Like, what's he doing? What's he mean? He's being cryptic, but I liked the cryptic because my hope was, hey, you're going to get little puzzle pieces each week. You're going to wait, you're going to get each piece, and then by, a certain time, it's all going to start to make sense. They backed off slightly, hit the brakes slightly the last couple of weeks where they weren't giving as much away of what his purpose is, why he's doing this, what he means by this is not your company anymore, what he means by all of these kind of cryptic things he was saying, like when he was saying, you don't know what to Darby, you don't know what's going on here, that kind of thing, that crypticness. So I'm hoping now next week you get a little more from him about what exactly his purpose is, his goals are here. But as far as, Moxley's just so good. He's so good on the mic. He's so good in the ring. Just the mannerisms, everything about him is so good that it's just been, to me, compelling from start to finish. And this was the Moxley I expected to see tonight.
What do you think the payoff is going to be? Do you have any speculation in terms of what ends up being this isn't your company anymore? I mean, there's still people hanging on to Shane McMahon showing up at the 5th anniversary show. I don't see how
that would make sense.
No. But I think if he was going to do that, I'm not sure they would have put the photo out of him and Tony. I mean, I'd be mad. Like, keep that totally. I mean, it would be totally shocking if it showed up on Dynamite. The photo felt.
And now it's 6 weeks ago too. I mean, it's been 6 weeks since then, so it's almost like ancient history sometimes when it comes to week, day to day. Attention spans and everything. I don't know. I'm just hoping that it's a well thought out story and that it's going to be something good and compelling. That's because that's, sometimes, AEW is been, guilty of starting something that was really intriguing and the follow through is just not, quite as good as you hoped it would be. Many different reasons. There's been injuries, there's been, changes that they had, control of and not control of and all that. So my hope is that, there is a payoff that's going to be good, but I can't really think of specifically what would be an amazing thing other than him saying, I'm changing things around here. He's going to have a new group and they're going to just, it's going to be BCC reborn,
Yeah. The question is, did we make too much out of him going, this isn't your company anymore? And it's like, and Mox is like, whoops, people think that means something more than, we're just a faction that's going to dominate our opponents.
Yeah.
So we will see. Expectations might be high, or they might have come in with, guns a-blazing, but not a lot of follow-up, which does happen sometimes, as you noted. I'm neither confident nor lacking confidence. I'm kind of just resigned to waiting and seeing. And this might be an instance where they got a kind of a cool next stage. Like you said, a little piece at a time. They had to get to this first. My next question for you, though, is based on what we saw tonight, does it give you any indications of whether you think Moxley ends Danielson's full-time career and wins the title at Wrestle Dream? I mean, there's, tons of rumors about everything. No, Danielson's really hurt. He can, there's things he just can't do, and he doesn't want to extend it longer. And others like, no, there's probably a series of opponents he wants, and Moxley is a good opponent to Tacoma, but there'll be others. Kind of where are you on it?
Yeah, I didn't think originally when he won the title and said he was gonna, quit full time when he lost it. I was thinking more end of the calendar year. I'm not quite sure now because it's clear that they, rushed this Nigel McGuinness match. Like, there was no real reason for it to just happen so quickly without a real solid build and everything. So the thought process is if they're rushing this and all of a sudden they're putting Moxley there and they're kind of putting aside the Darby, Danielson match, which would have been fun, but maybe he is just so banged up that he just wants to call it quits and have Moxley win. And then he can always come, take 6 months off, come back for a match, here and there for, part-time stuff. But I like that aspect of it because, I won't know going into the main event of Wrestle Dream. I'm going to sit and watch it and I'm going to be on the edge of my seat because it could go either way. And so that's what I want when I'm especially the pay-per-view matches, but I didn't. And, somewhat with tonight as well, I thought maybe Danielson was going to get involved during the match, which could have given, Moxley the out to lose and all that. So I wasn't quite sure. So that really, is what I'm looking for in these big matches is just don't make it predictable. And this way, the way they're, with the rumors and everything, it's not going to be predictable at Wrestle Dream, which is great.
Yeah. For every credible report, this is what I'm hearing, there'll be some counter rumor to keep us on the edge of our seat when we watch the match. That's the way you want it. You don't want to know ahead of time what's going to happen. Some people do, but I don't think that's the best way to enjoy a suspenseful pro wrestling main event. So the faction for Darby is, the faction for Moxley is further established here with Pac and Claudio running out, but also Marina Shafir at ringside, I think is worthy of a brief talking point here, because if Moxley's going to be a heel and the Blackpool Combat Club were sort of like undefined, they're facing baby faces, so they're technically heel, but fans are still cheering them. Marina's providing a really important component to a traditional heel. Some people kind of roll their eyes and think, oh, it's too cliche, but she is running interference. She's getting in the way of Darby multiple times in the match to give Moxley an advantage. And her demeanor's great. As in the chat room, as I say, great, Brian Bayless says, Marina's presence is great. It's totally in sync. I did not read that, even peripherally. She has been great. I've been really impressed with her. And I think she's an important addition to Moxley trying to get booed. Your thoughts?
Yeah, she's found her role. Through all this time where she was wrestling a lot on Dark and maybe Rampage or whatever, and she would win a couple and mostly lose. And then Moxley talked her up at the podcast, and Now you see it fruition. They found a role for her that works perfect. She doesn't say a word. She doesn't even smile. She just stands there. She takes care of business. It's perfect for Moxley and allows him to have that, help, and not that he necessarily needs the help, but he's going to take the help, and so, and then, his buddies Pac, that's a great role for him, now that he can find a spot that really works for him. Claudio's great, in that role as well. And so, I think, and it's clear, like you said, it is a clear, they're heels, what they're going to do. And that will help, because that was the BCC issue back and forth, throughout the months.
Exactly. If Moxie wants to be a heel, you're making life difficult for your babyface opponents if you don't add a few ingredients that will actually get fans to boo you, when the natural inclination of AEW fans is to worship him and cheer him. So Marina, and it's good that Marina's good in her role. Keith Birdie, Bridie in the chat says, Marina's the new Sting. Her best work is standing there stoic and not wrestling. I've said that. It sounds like a backhanded compliment, but not everybody can do nothing and be as charismatic as Sting was. And it was Sting's best work and best era. It's mixed results when Sting.
It's also like early. It's also like early Hook, as well.
That's very
he's stood there.
Totally
so
accurate.
For him.
I didn't mind his promo tonight, but you're not wrong overall. Yeah,
he did great tonight. And how's that not the top story of the show? That they have one less title now. Oh my God, celebration.
If they had 2 titles, it would be a top story. But when you have 7 or 12, it's barely going to be noticed. But
baby steps.
We'll get that. But it's like you said, Hulk tonight was good, but he's best when he's stoic and not talking. Sting had good promos in his career for sure, but his peak was standing there not talking. Marina, less of the good body of work otherwise than Sting has, but she's good in a role. Sadler version 3 says, this is the first time I've seen Marina in a useful role. 27 Newsman says, Marina is very China-like, strong, silent, great hench woman for Moxley to order around. And Zach Barber, good to see you, Zach, says Marina has been an absolute badass. She's got the most, okay, I can't say that, facial expression. You snuck up on me there, Zach. I don't know if I have to blot that out later. All right. So let's actually pause. Let's introduce ourselves formally here, and then we'll get to other topics from the show. Maybe expand on what we just talked about too. This is a Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Wednesday, September 25th, 2024, and I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, the editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch Weekly newsletter and the website PWTorch.com. We're approaching our 25th anniversary of launching our website coming up at the end of this year. And so, wow, life changed when we went from paper copy only and doing 900 number updates in the 90s to suddenly having no off days, no off hours. It was just 24/7 coverage. But it's been a blast. It's 25 years of that. Anyway, so yeah, check out our website, PWTorch.com. We're just blasting it with updates now. News, breaking news, editorials, things you won't find anywhere else, exclusives, live TV coverage, live pay-per-view coverage, great columns. The aforementioned Zach Barber is a must-read every Wednesday afternoon with his AEW storyline tracker. We've got our hits and misses columns with great writers, with one exception. I won't mention his name. No, it's not Gregg. No, and it's actually no one. Everyone's great. And then we're also putting up, it's kind of a niche thing, but we're putting up our archive articles from 5, 10, 20, and even sometimes 30 years ago reports that we've been doing. We've been doing this long enough that we can go back to my coverage of Raw, my paper copy print newsletter write-ups of Raw from 1994. So we're doing 30 years ago Raw flashbacks, and it's hilarious how there was almost nothing on Raw every week. And like the highlight is like Dink kicking Jerry Lawler in the ankles. Like it was such a different era back then. But I encourage people, click on those links and scroll through. It's kind of fun to see what was going on 5, 10, 20, even 30 years ago. So anyway, lots of good stuff on PWTorch.com. Yes. Lots of stuff you won't find anywhere.
Yeah.
Go ahead. If you're going to step on my plug, you got to finish.
I'm sorry. It's only my second appearance on your show with you, so I got to get the rules down. I apologize. I was just going to say I remember that era very well. Outside of my dark years that we talk about on the All Elite Conversation Club, which I'm sure you'll mention shortly.
Yeah.
Please
Yes.
continue your plug.
Oh, it's the moment passed, but click. It's fun. It's click on the archives. It's fun to see what's going on in the past and to see what we're writing about it. It's fun stuff. Same thing with, by the way, I do a bunch of podcasts. It's the next part of my plugs. This is the post show. We stream live on YouTube after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. You can find us on YouTube on the PWTorch channel, live streaming within just a couple minutes, like 2, 3, 4 minutes after the shows go off the air usually. Sometimes a couple minutes longer if we're scrambling. But yeah, watch us live and participate. If you're listening to us on the podcast side of things, which is where the vast majority of you are, we've been doing our podcast side of things for I mean, really, we've been podcasting for what are we going on? Over 20 years we've been podcasting, and the post show's been going strong, going back a decade. So if you're hearing us there and you want to be part of the live experience, you're invited to join us live on YouTube. And you can also be part of the show that way through the chat room, or if you're a VIP member or Patreon supporter, you can get our video caller code. That video caller code changes with every show. It is posted on our Patreon page for our Patreon supporters, and also in my TV reports on the PWTorch VIP website for our VIP members. So you're invited to join us there. But if you can't join us live, you can email us and be part of the show that way. WadeKellerPodcast@gmail.com. WadeKellerPodcast@gmail.com is how you can, while watching Raw, Dynamite, or SmackDown, send in a comment, a rant, a question, a topic suggestion. That is also the email address for our flagship, where you can just write about anything, and we may answer your question on the flagship. Speaking of which, yesterday, Jason Powell from ProWrestling.net joined me on the flagship, and that is available for everybody on the podcast side of things. If you are watching us on YouTube and aren't familiar with our podcast lineup, search Wade Keller on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any iOS or Android app. And when you search Wade Keller, you'll see our blue logo show, which is on the screen now for our YouTube viewers. Subscribe for free and check out yesterday's flagship. A lot of conversation with Jason and me about a wide array of topics. And we even had a VIP extra after show for our supporters. And then while you're at it, subscribe to the red logo show, the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling post show, which is a podcast format also, but it includes shows that are not on YouTube. So even if you're primarily watching our post shows on YouTube, it's worth subscribing. And when you're in the mood for a podcast, check us out. So subscribe to both, search Wade Keller, and subscribe to both. While you're at it, search Wade Keller. Search PWTorch, because you'll have access to the All Elite Conversation Club as part of the PWTorch Daily Cast lineup. Search PWTorch on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any iOS or Android podcast app. And there's a different show each day of the week, different hosts, different themes, a lot of cool content with some very talented and well-informed and opinionated hosts. Greg Canner, my co-host today on the post show.
You forgot Handsome.
One of them, and Handsome, yes. Greg, welcome back to the post show. It's always good when your schedule works out where you can be with us in this co-host position. Tell people about your show with the AEW theme show on the PWTorch Daily Cast lineup, which is also free for everybody.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate you having me back on the show. It means I didn't do a horrendous job.
Your suspension is over. Your suspension is over.
All right, that's good. Good. I have agreed with some things that you've said on our show from time to time.
You're getting more.
Not all the time.
Eating the optimism and the rose-colored glasses off of you.
I have always been one to point out things that I didn't like. with still keeping my love for most things AEW does. But yes, the All Elite Conversation Club every week. Joel Donnell and I break down AEW, and we just have a lot of fun. I could not have asked for a better partner for this show. The chemistry I think is really good. He's a younger man than I, so he has a younger man's perspective, and I can kind of chime in with my dad jokes and older references. But it's been great. It's been a lot of fun, and we just talk about how Dynamite goes, the news of the week, everything like that. And we try to make it mostly a positive show, because we both love AEW and we want it to succeed, and I think they do a lot of things right. But we will also call them out, and there are things that drive me nuts and all that. It's not enough for me to quit on them or say this is not for me anymore. But we talk about it all. We have some great listeners who chime in. Zach gives us some trivia every week, which is a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
Even if he centers a lot of his trivia on that 1992 to 95, 96 portion of that I did not watch, so I don't have that knowledge. And he always seems to hammer those sometimes. I'm like, I wish I, But outside of that, it's great. It's a lot of fun every week.
Excellent. So again, search PWTorch on your podcast app and subscribe. You can also stream them right from our PWTorch.com website. So let's dive back into analysis here of Dynamite, and let's go back to the beginning of the show. It's kind of trying to choose what to do next year. It's kind of a lot of things we can talk about, but Nigel McGuinness comes out first, looking very fit and ready for a fight. And then Danielson's typical entrance music plays. Danielson doesn't come out. Excalibur said this is about the time Danielson would come out if he was coming out. I was watching the McMahon documentary and doing a Wade Keller hotline for VIP members with my 30-minute, just like off the top of my head, like instant reaction to part one. And then I'm like trying to get it edited and posted before watching Dynamite. So when I started covering Dynamite, Greg, I'm like, did they announce Danielson was cleared because they're going right to the match, or are they going to? And so I like went to their Twitter feed, didn't see anything on it. And then even before I could get very far, then that's when the announcer said, we don't even know if Danielson's cleared. We don't know if he's even here. And I'm like, all right, well, and then it crossed my mind. Might they not do the match and say he wasn't cleared? And will there be a riot in the stadium, or will they be like, well, it's legitimately, we were hoping it would be, and he wasn't. I mean, all these things crossed through my head in like 3 seconds, but then Nigel grabs the mic, asks for a count out. The dumbest men on earth are given striped shirts in AEW. We know that. So the referee instantly, even though the bell hasn't rung, starts counting to 10 because the heel wrestler told him to. And of course, they get to decide everything. I roll. And so as the 10 counts happening, we wait till 9, and then final countdown kicks in. Danielson comes out. He's ready to go. And they have a long and nice match. I actually think they can be proud of how long it took them to take a bump or do a high spot. Like, I think the first high spot was like a label lock from sitting on the mat, like 10 minutes in, it was like, they really told a nice story, but paced themselves, like Nigel might not be in wrestling shape and Danielson might be about to fall apart. And so they have such a skill set. They told a really good story and built nicely, even within the parameters that might've been somewhat limiting. And it made the match stand out. And then in the end, Danielson gets a tap out win. And Nigel, as the announcers pointed out, said, thank you. Right as he was tapping. Well, the announcer said he did at about the 19-minute mark. Yeah. So Greg, that's sort of my just set, giving an overview of it. I'm curious for your thoughts on the execution of it.
Yeah, I mean, the damage was done prior to this as far as the build. So, I went into it understanding and coming to terms with they could have done a better job over the last couple of weeks. I would have loved to have had an in-ring promo between the two, going back and forth, talking about their history and all that. I thought that really would have helped. And you could tell the reactions at the beginning of the match were, I think, a lot to do with that. I think people, they were happy to see it. The hardcores, appreciated the two, standing across from each other and everything. And I thought it was cool. I did not watch those two wrestle in ROH at the time. I've seen clips and I'm aware of the history and all that by now. But outside of that and the build going in, I thought they did a great job of, doing the wrestling at the beginning, showing off their chemistry together. I thought was very good. It's a different style than we're used to seeing with AEW as well for the most part. So I thought that was fresh and I thought that was cool. Then the crowd kind of started to get into it as we got going, which was great. About the maybe 12, 13-minute mark, it went into high gear, kind of picked up and the crowd started getting into it. And you got a lot of yes chants, you got a lot of that stuff. I think the storytelling was great. I'm because I didn't watch it back in the day, I'm sure there were some Easter eggs from those older matches where they kind of did some fun things because they tend to do that. You're muted.
I watched them back in the day and I didn't see the Easter. I didn't notice Easter eggs, but that just could be because I haven't watched the matches in 15 years. No, I'm what I'm leading to is if there's Easter eggs, it's people who have a better memory than me or have watched the matches back recently. But I'm sure that there were callbacks. I mean, that's Danielson and Nigel's style to do that. Well, especially Danielson.
Right.
Nigel, I don't know if he has a modern style. He hasn't been around in the
Yeah,
ring
and
enough.
yeah, and I've never, this is, but because I didn't watch him regularly, I just knew Nigel for the most part from being, a WWE announcer and then coming into AEW as well. And I am a big fan of his. I like, sometimes he goes a little over the top, but I always loved the heel announcer in the Bobby Heenan way of doing it. So, he kind of has that little style to him, which always cracks me up. And he kind of, his attempt to make Tony Schiavone or somebody kind of laugh or be like, come on, or, is almost like that Bobby Heenan, Gorilla Monsoon, attempt type of thing. So I loved that then. So I love him now, but wrestling wise, he impressed me. He was in great shape. He was able to go. Yeah, I'm sure the pace at the beginning helped out, but it was very enjoyable. It made sense. Saying thank you at the end, TBS, hitting the button, hitting the drop button, made it seem like it could be something else. So I'm glad the announcers followed up to make it clear, that that's what they were going for. And it was nice. And I thought it told a good story there with, even though the build wasn't as good as it could have been.
Joel in the chat says, Nigel was in great shape. I loved his ROH pure style, which is what this match was in a lot of ways. A nice departure from the dives and flips. Jim Ross told the story well, as did the other commentators. I was glad to hear Jim Ross in the opener, and this was a good match for him to call. They had him in the main event also. He wasn't in the middle of the show, was he, or was he? Okay. I
don't think so.
It's like when I heard his voice in the main event, I'm like, if I say he wasn't around for the last couple of matches, is that going to be because he didn't say much or I forgot and it wasn't memorable? But so they usually don't have him up for the full show, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and giving him a break from the flippy match is probably a wise move too.
Absolutely, yeah, because I mean, you don't want Russ out there for Young Bucks matches. He can't help himself. And so and he speaks for a certain part of the audience in a way that I don't think the Bucks and Tony want sometimes. So yes, it was good. So for people who didn't see or didn't notice, speaking of commentary, the bell for the match rings about 6 minutes into the hour. As the match begins, Excalibur says this: they are two men who took the Ring of Honor promotion from being a regional tri-state promotion to a national touring company based on their battles. And I'm thinking, that'd have been nice to say 4 weeks ago. Ross said he looked forward to this match more than any match he's ever called. Then a couple minutes later, after Taz said he had stuff to get back in ring shape after time away, then Excalibur said, when Nigel thought his time was over as a pro wrestler due to an accumulation of injuries and he stopped wrestling, that's when Danielson ascended to international superstardom. Where was this 3 weeks ago? I mean, like, they did this backwards. Like, it's like it finally clicked that there are people who just didn't live through something or do research or have a best friend who told them or read all about it on Reddit. They just want to tune in and watch Dynamite and know everything have everything canon that's important on Dynamite. And so they finally got around to it after the bell rang. I mean, I would say better late than never, and it's true, it's better late than never, but come on. Like that was so, that's all I've been asking for. Like right there for the last few weeks is just that. Like people think I want them to take away like a half hour of Dynamite to do a documentary. It's like, no, just say this stuff. Be excited to share what you know with people who you want to invite into that world and get them excited too. And they did it. So I don't want to get yelled at for not giving them credit for doing it. So credit for doing it, but also, a few weeks ago would have been good. Gregg, you're nodding along. Chime in here.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect point. And like I said before, just a little more, background information would help. Now I'm aware of it for the most part. I'm watching no matter what. The hardcore fans are going to watch no matter what. But the point that you often make that I completely agree with is that if you want to be a company that gets more people watching and more people in the stands, and then doing this would have made this match more appointment viewing, where people had a couple weeks to get ready for it. Then they're like, I can't wait for this match, on Wednesday. I'm going to tune in. I'm going to make sure I tune in. Yeah, I'm curious to see what the what the ratings are going to be, for this tomorrow, because this few week period coming out of All Out was with the Moxley storyline going on and the Hangman and the Swerve and everything going along. You had an opportunity to build, on each show, building to this event here, which is one of their biggest dynamites of the year, to next week, which is a 5-year anniversary, to Wrestle Dream, which is your next pay-per-view. And so last week was nice to see the ratings go up, but last week wasn't, in my opinion, the greatest episode. So I'm hopeful that they did enough to get people tuning into this, and they gave them something that they wanted to see. And to your point, at least explaining it early on in that match helped for those who just tuned in, and starting with the match kind of would grab attention as well, rather than starting with something else.
Yeah, we'll have those ratings on PWTorch.com tomorrow afternoon, so be on the lookout for those. PWTorch is often first and cited by a lot of other sites when we break ratings news. We get data nobody else gets, and I've got years of spreadsheets built up, and I always try to put it in perspective in a digestible way for readers, and you can kind of understand. I put up the raw numbers on our PWTorch Twitter X page on Tuesday and said, it was this lowest rating of the year, lowest viewership number of the year for Raw. But it's just very limited data. Said full story at PWTorch. Whole comment section, so typical. Whole comment section on Twitter is WWE's falling apart, they're dying. And it's like, if you read the story itself, like it was basically the same rating they drew a year ago. The first to third hour drop off was one of the lowest of the year, almost 200,000 less than usual. There's ratings are complicated. There's a lot of ways to look at it, but don't just don't rely on social media for your wrestling news. If you want to actually understand what the F is going on and not look like an idiot, like most people who make comments on social media. That's why, I just say I don't spend a lot of time reacting to randos on social media. I don't spend a lot of time on it, but I was looking at comments on this, and it's like read the article. You guys are drawing conclusions that are so lacking context. And I know there's partisans out there on both sides, and some of that is what's going on, but this is a roundabout way of saying we put work into trying to create a clear and relevant and not belabored rating story multiple times a week, and it's worth going to PWTorch.com for that. And like I said, we're often first and get cited everywhere else for them. Okay.
Yeah, and it's great to see the when you look at the spreadsheets and the comparisons of year to year and everything like that, you can see trends and everything, and you can see trends where things are doing better for them or worse, or why, and if were they on another channel, what's going up against them. It's always fascinating. And then you can, like with many things, you can look at the ratings and interpret them in many different ways.
And like NXT, viewership is down, but the 18 to 49 demo is up or pretty steady from a year ago. And so what does that mean? Well, it means what's happening. There's a trend in NXT where their audience is getting younger at a time when, AEW is losing that lead that they had. There's really good data. There's good conclusions to draw and things to learn from mining the data. And like you said, Greg, putting it in perspective, we do the 10-week rolling averages. We compare it to the 10-week averages 1 and 2 years ago. We look at the total viewership and we look at the demo ratings and compare it to prior years and try to put, some objective perspective on it, because it's not always just a real simple story. And Raw was the number 2 show on all of cable on Monday. It was one of the lowest viewed Raws of all time. It also was number 2 behind ESPN's Monday Night Football. I mean, it is a changing landscape. There's so many ways you can frame this stuff. But tomorrow
proves. Yeah, I was gonna say that proves that how valuable live wrestling is, which is why AEW is likely getting a very good television deal whenever they decide to announce it. Mm-hmm. And so because despite total viewership numbers and everything else, you're getting large amount of the cable audience still, and that is huge for them. The demos. Yes. And I mean, my work in television for 30 years, I've come a long way from
you look 28 years old. How have you been in TV for 30 years?
Yeah. Thank you. I recently turned big 50, so I'm
you must have a soft focus lens. You could pass.
There's also a reason I'm wearing the hat too. So
fair enough.
That's not helping either yet. But I blame that on my kids. but being around, seeing the importance of demos over the specific number, where if the demo's going up, it's important. And unfortunately now no longer in the 18 to 49 demo am I, so I have to rely on the 25 to 54 demos. Like, I'm in that one still.
Well, and I tell you what, that the total audience matters too. I say that all the time. I mean, they're obviously, and I saw a headline a month ago just going why cable is now touting their full viewership numbers, not just the core demo, and selling it to advertisers. There's, it's not just 18 to 49 that matters, but if you're trying to sell pay-per-views, which AEW may or may not be in the business of next year, depending on what news comes out of that, they'll have pay-per-views, but it might be included in Max. That remains to be announced and seen. But if you want to sell tickets, you want to sell tickets to 50-year-olds and 55-year-olds and 17-year-olds who aren't in that 18 to 49 demo. When viewership goes down, you're losing ticket buyers, merch buyers, and pay-per-view buyers from your audience too. So
yeah, and it's a lot easier now as well for people younger than 18 and older than 49 to order things that you might see in advertisement, because you grab your phone, you hit 2 buttons and you order something. Back in the older days, you'd have to find it, go out, go to a store, go to a restaurant, go to whatever. You can just, hey, that food looks good, I'm going to DoorDash it or whatever, it's easy for, older people to do it. So I think they reach more people now and it's more valuable than it used to be.
I don't know, the technology of getting somebody, I won't say 50, but once you get a little past 60, you're starting to run into some challenges where people are like, where's my cable remote? And don't tell me to talk to it. Just where's the paper? Anyway. All right. Let's move on here. So a big picture on the Nigel Danielson thing. Was it worth it? Or was it just a favor to Nigel? Like because this goes full circle back to the rating, because I don't think this is going to do a particularly strong rating relative to other shows, but I don't know for sure. I mean, Grand Slam carries some cachet, and Arthur Ashe Stadium, I mean, it's a little bit of a buzz, and Moxley wrestling after his comeback against Darby is an attractive match, and the Bucks defending the tag titles. I mean, this wasn't a weak lineup, but it just something about going into the show, the build with Nigel Danielson especially, I don't know. I didn't sense that this is gonna, like, what's the average the last let's see, the last 10 weeks. I got it in front of me. Averages just under 700,000. I mean, are they going to do more than 750, Greg? Do you think?
I came into this week thinking that if I were them, I'd be disappointed if it was less than 800.
Yeah.
I would think, with it being the name of Grand Slam, the history of it, the card that they've put out, the intriguing matches, for most to view, I would have thought that, I think 800. I'm not saying it's going to be 850, 900, a million. But I would be disappointed if it was less than 800 from them. But it wouldn't shock me if it was 750.
So I'll put this in perspective. Last year, the 10 weeks leading up to Grand Slam, the average was 880. So they're down 180,000, by the way, from a year ago in their 10-week rolling average. And they popped a rating of 96,000 more viewers. They did 984,000, which was an increase of almost 100,000 from the 888 the week before. So last week, 687, that put them at 787. So ballpark figure is, 750 to 800 feels like it would be if AI with no human knowledge, it got instant, if AI just said what's likely to happen, I think like 770 would probably be roughly the guess. So, that's probably my over under 770, and I think they should be disappointed if they don't hit 800 with what they did. But I'm also in a position, I'm saying I wouldn't be shocked if it's 760 either. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the thing. It's been very difficult because I think their builds and some of the things they could have been doing production wise, could be better for getting people involved storyline week to week, like the Moxley. I said earlier about the Moxley and the puzzle pieces and trying to put it together. When you take a couple weeks and don't really give someone anything, to say, oh, I can't wait to find out what's going to happen, you're going to get less people, tuning in.
So, playing into the fewer people tuning in theme is the chat room. Ramen Noodle says no chance for 800K against the Fever game. And King of Strong Style says, how many AEW fans really watch the WNBA? Come on now. Well, it doesn't have to be a lot, just enough to chip away at 800, getting to 800. And then GWF ESPN 1992 predicts 675. So basically down from last week because of a massive rating predicted for Fever Game. Everyone I know was watching. And he says the biggest NBA playoff game in history or close to it from a fan interest standpoint. So that, I mean, if AEW is looking for an excuse, or excuse is the wrong word, a reason. I mean, excuse is kind of a loaded word. If they're looking for a reason, if the number comes in to not feel so bad, they did have bad luck going up against what will likely be pretty competitive, competition.
Yeah, but there's always something. There's these days with how much sports is being, or a debate or something, whatever it may be, especially in, the States now with the election coming up, you have people tuning into other things too, but it's still, there's always going to be something. It's up to AEW not to be concerned about, that, and just put on the best show possible week after week. And then things will take care of themselves. When I listen to you and Todd talk all the time, he's brought up points for years about ratings, about the trends, and where better wrestling, better stories and everything doesn't directly mean ratings skyrocket immediately. It's a slow roll when it goes up, and it's a slow dip when it goes down, and so they have to ride that and just continue to focus on themselves. No, not WWE, not anything else, just themselves, and put on the best shows, and then people will start watching.
Yeah, King of Strong Style says agree. Just put on great shows; it'll take care of itself. Now you have to have the right idea of what a great show is, and a great show for echo chamber on Twitter might not be the type of great show that's going to help you add 200,000 viewers or at least slow down the decrease with people stepping away from cable. So, I mean, it's not as simple as put on a great show and they'll come. You got to actually be cognizant of the fact that what's a great show to you might not be the type of show that will actually expand your audience. And that's why Vince McMahon in part one of the Netflix documentary said it's babyface heel. They fight in front of a crowd. It sounds easy. It's not. It's sounds easier than it is. And a lot of people sometimes make it more difficult than it has to be. So going back to my question, Darrell says Nigel versus Bryan wasn't worth it. It was a good match, but it wasn't an AEW level match, and the build didn't match what I saw. It looked like two old men having a good match. Mark Piscetti in the chat says Nigel deserved it, but it wasn't what they should have run to sell out Arthur Ashe. So I go back to you, and I'll actually throw to you on this. Was it ultimately ratings without ratings knowledge present to us right now? Do you think it was worth it for the sake of giving Nigel this match with the, here's my loaded question, a pretty niche audience that remembered what happened, 15 years ago between these two?
Considering that we're at the end of Bryan Danielson's full-time career, it was worth it to do this match in general, because they had spent a year plus having Nigel, run him down and all that. And I think it would have been better received by the non-niche audience with the better build, as we had discussed earlier. So I think it was worth it to plan to do it. I just think the execution of the build and everything, whether they had to rush it for whatever reason they had to rush it, whether they were desperate to sell tickets, whether they're desperate to get something big so they want a big rating, whether Danielson's not going to be up for it long term, whatever it is, that was, what did it in, I guess, even though I still enjoyed it, and because I am, a super fan, and I know the background.
Yes. Yep. All right. I'm with you on that. I mean, you're kind of matching my thoughts. I just wish we could have seen good hype for this. I don't know why people even fight the notion that this was, botched. It was done in reverse order, and even Nigel's promo on Collision was fine, but it wasn't enough, and so. All right. And Zach Barber, who does the AW Feud Tracker on Wednesday afternoon, says Gregg is spot on. As I said in my column, they left so much meat on the bone. So
Thank you, Zach.
I don't think I gave quite enough credit to Zach's column at Make a Destination reading every Wednesday afternoon leading into Dynamite or right before you sit down for Dynamite. Zach does a great job. It works for me. It reminds me of things that happened last week, puts in perspective, what's going on heading into Dynamite, what's at stake. And he's makes good points about, where the strengths are and where the weaknesses are going into it. He definitely puts effort in and is a good writer. So people should check that out every Wednesday. Make an appointment reading. Zach also disagrees, saying you were underselling Nigel's promo. I did a Wade Keller hotline reviewing that, and I didn't think it was. I thought it was okay. I thought the acting was kind of stilted. I thought that it was leaning hard on things that weren't established till after the bell rang tonight. In terms of the backstory, and I think they needed to have other voices besides Shivani saying that Danielson's not a coward for not being here. He's just medically not cleared. There were other things that needed to be said, which is, what are you going to prove if Danielson is barely cleared medically? What does it prove? And why? And they didn't even establish why you could extrapolate and construct a reason that Nigel was upset, but they never said why he essentially retired until tonight. They kind of skirted the issue. And it's just, seriously, there were like 2 lines from Excalibur, and had they just done that a few weeks ago, this would have been so much better. That foundation needed to be there. It's like you got to prime before you paint. You got to sand before you stain wood, and they just got the order wrong. Greg.
Yeah, I mean, the video package they aired last week was extremely good. It was very, very well done and gave you a little bit of some background and everything.
It still could have been better, but it was good. But I'm not going to say it was great. There's still issues with
it. I enjoyed it,
curve.
but to me, the key was them in the ring together, talking back and forth, explaining themselves. Because Danielson, coming out, I've heard you, talking down to me for a year on Khalid. You think I didn't hear that? I heard every word you said, and there's a reason why, and this is back and forth. They can do it. It's not like one of them can't talk. So if they could have had that was what I thought was missing. Because if you had that just, and it didn't even have to be like some 10, 15 minute promo. It could have been just a 5-6 minute promo. Boom, back and forth. They air out all the grievances and why they want to fight, and then it leads right into this week. But again, that was what they did. For whatever reason they did it, and
Yep. Well put. Darrell says Nigel versus Bryan was a house show match and would have been worth being on a house show, not a TV match, since the build wasn't good. If the build was better, then it would be worth a TV match. GWF ESPN 1992 says WWE is winning because they are doing new things, not rehashing obscure indie feuds from when the Iraq War was still going on. As far as the promo on Collision that Zach said I was underselling, Michael Frazier says Nigel isn't believable on the mic. His facial expressions and everything is like he's playing a wrestler, and it's not believable. Sadler version 3 said, yeah, I didn't like Nigel. I didn't take Nigel seriously either. The acting was pretty bad. I thought there was.
I do agree. I agree with that on his promo a little bit too over the top. Which again, I'm not gonna beat it over and over and over again, but that's why face to face would have been better. Yeah,
no, totally. And some wrestlers are not good just standing in the ring, gritting their teeth, and I mean, he had all this pent up, sort of this constipated, built up 15 years of anger, but he never got around to why Danielson didn't end his career. He retired because of accumulation of injuries, and now he's mad at Danielson. Why? They never actually got around to saying that. And what it should have been is Nigel is insanely jealous because he thinks he should have had the career Danielson had, but because he wasn't able to push through his injuries like Danielson was, he had to retire early, and it's eating him up inside, and he has a bunch of what ifs, and he thinks he can cleanse himself of this regret and anger that's totally unjustified and not Danielson's fault by beating Danielson in 2024. I mean, how hard is that if you're Excalibur or Taz or Tony Schiavone to say that 3 weeks ago? And then everything else should be based off that table setting, and they couldn't get there until the bell rang tonight. It's just crazy to me.
And I do have an issue with the rehashing obscure indie feuds, comment, because outside of that one that we're talking about now, that's the only one they've done, to my knowledge. AEW is doing new things, as well. They're trying hard to tell good stories. They've told a handful of really good stories this year. The Tony Storm Mariah May was one of the best stories they've ever done. Long-term storytelling and everything. So they're not all going to be, hits. They're not all going to work every time, but they're trying hard not to just throw random matches out anymore. They've so.
Well,
Eddie Kingston and Claudio, but that was forever ago, and they built it. I mean, it was multiple years ago.
Yeah, and they told a better job. They did a better job, like catching you up on it. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Although GW says it was a feud over someone refusing to do a job in Chikara, but they didn't include. They created a canon for it. I didn't think it was great, but I mean, it at least they tried.
Okay. If they decide to do that once every 2 years, I think I can deal with that.
Yeah, obviously AEW's rep is, and it was their origin story. I mean, the genesis of it was, we're bringing in this all-star crew of people who've been great the last 3 to 6 years in PWG in Japan, and kind of partially ROH, and although NXT kind of snatched up a lot of that equity during the takeover era, and obviously eventually Mexico too. But that was the origin story, and I remember talking to Jerry Jarrett, and when TNA launched, and he was convinced that the website reading audience in the post WCW ECW shutdown, after they shut down era, was enough to sustain a weekly $10 pay-per-view, because he did the math and he thought that's a big audience that are going to pay. And the numbers came in 90% lower than he expected, because, I mean, nothing is apples to apples in this, but mistakes have been made before. If you live in a kind of a internet social media bubble, you can think there's a lot more people who are as into it as you are, or think the same way you do. And AEW actually rode that for a while and were way more successful than TNA out of the gate with big crowds. But what they didn't do well, and this is more big picture, but hey, we're approaching the 5-year anniversary here. What they didn't do is take that energy and that momentum and start soon enough doing B+, A-, A level or stories within the canon of Dynamite for the people who were disgruntled with WWE, but were not watching New Japan Tokyo Dome shows. They were not buying PWG videos, and they weren't enamored with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. They felt like that wasn't a club they belonged to, but they were willing to be pulled into something new. But AEW kept making it seem, I think, to a detrimental degree, people disagree, that's fine, that it wasn't the welcome mat wasn't rolled out in a way that I think would have been more effective for him to get that so-called vaunted second million. And now they've, lost people who were, and part of that because WWE is better than it was, and Vince McMahon is gone. That's part of it. And there's a pandemic, and there's been unfortunate injuries, and CM Punk was CM Punk. But Gregg, I mean, my full circle point here is the idea that they're pulling from the indie scene is part of the AEW origin story. And it kind of is a cloud that kind of hangs over, that they leaned too hard on it. And I think some people somewhat rightfully still agree. I think there's still a lot of stuff going on AEW that AEW is never in the kind of opening to closing credits of Dynamite let you know who these characters are, including, by the way, Prince Nana. I mean, you can figure it out pretty quick, but like, there's no one in AEW on air who's excited to catch you up on things. They need that personality. That is the type of person that I am. If there's something I'm passionate about, I love going, let me tell you about it. Let me get you as excited as I am. And AEW doesn't have that person on or off camera who has that mindset and enthusiasm to do that.
Yeah, and they, for the most part, haven't been willing to change much of their plan, I guess. They have made improvements by far. Production is far better. Video packages you see more often. There's a lot of things that have improved for the good. But there's a lot of build certain times building to matches or stories can hurt, or not giving as much information or everything. And so the only concern I have as a big fan of AEW is Tony Khan needs to understand that it's okay to adjust and change, and without, you're not going to become WWE if you change and do a couple things different, because I know that's not what he wants to be. You're never going to see the Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, 10 p.m. CBS drama scene, on AEW television. You're just not going to, you're not going to see that. So he doesn't want to do that, but he's got to be able to adjust, listen to people, and improve and see what's ahead of him and what can improve the get more people to watch is basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yep. And the idea that AEW fans take pride in AEW. Well, I'll pull the quote up instead of if I can refind it here. So Zach's Barber says, "A wrestling world is AEW's canon." And then Ramen Noodle says, "That's going to happen when your wrestling world isn't a walled garden and refusing to acknowledge anything you didn't create." And then Zach says, "Exactly. The problem with that is you don't have to be a walled garden." Or I'm sorry, I want to phrase this right. You can be proud that AEW isn't a walled garden, but also not have a self-defeating attitude that if someone is watching and they're not aware of things happening outside of that garden because it isn't part of the national cable TV show that they take 2 hours out of their busy lives to watch, and that's the beginning and end of what they want their AEW experience to be, that you're excluding them because you don't have someone who's enthusiastic and talented or even crosses their mind to go on television in some form or fashion, make sure that things outside of the walled garden are explained to them in a way that gets them invested and fully caught up on it. And I do, you can go overboard in that way, but AEW hasn't come close to going overboard in that way. It just doesn't seem to even land on their radar. Again, because I think Tony Khan, a fault of his is he lives in a social media bubble. There's an echo chamber, and he thinks it represents the world. And there are people in AEW who ask me earnestly, "Wade, how many people who watch Dynamite do you think are on Twitter during the week? Kind of help, and like there's people in that company who like just don't really know, but they're concerned because in that behind the scenes in AEW, everything is assumed to be part of canon that Tony Khan saw on Twitter that week. And there are people who think that's really bad and have long ago thrown in the towel and tried to fight it. But it's caused them distress over the years that's the attitude internally, and they just don't know how to push back because sometimes when you talk to Tony, before you finish your question, he starts talking, and 10 minutes later, hasn't stopped, and then he has to go somewhere else and do something else. And it's hard to get, it is hard to have a conversation sometimes with him because of kind of his personality and his passion and enthusiasm, but also sometimes filibustering during what should be a back and forth conversation. And I won't do that to you, Greg. Go ahead.
No, well, what's a good example for me personally, where I can understand what you're saying is, I'm as big a fan as AEW as anybody, but because I work in the evenings and I don't get out of work until 11:30, Eastern time, I record most of the time all the shows, and on Saturdays for the Collision, for example, I'm doing things with family or whatever. I'm not watching live. So I purposely do not follow wrestling Twitter. Like I don't follow anybody because I don't want things spoiled for me, because it takes the fun out of it. So, so which is a public service. Please, no one spoil what's if they read what happens on the Collision, that's going on as we speak now. Because I want to Saturday, especially with a good Collision card, which is rare these days. So I want to be able to watch it Saturday and enjoy it. But the point being that I'm sometimes not aware of some videos that come out, some like really good like promos after that they have gotten a little bit better of showing on television now, but before sometimes they just wouldn't show a video that they shoot after Dynamite and it shows up on Twitter or something like that, and I miss it because I don't follow it, or a match that's going to happen, maybe on Monday they release some stuff on the AEW Twitter, or I hear, or a reporter Twitter or something they say, because I just don't follow it. I don't want any spoilers when I'm watching, when I'm at work, because at my job, I always have Twitter up for sports breaking news of any sort. So I don't want, wrestling results flopping in there when I'm trying to work. And then I'm like, oh, I was going to watch it when I get home. So it's, even for me, the big fan, it's the same.
That's why creating lists on Twitter X is good instead of the full feed. Like I almost am never on my main feed. I follow way too many people. I have lists, and it's very specific to what I want at that moment. Different sports teams, politics, current events, comedy, humor. I mean, I have lists, and I just, whatever I'm moved for, I would look at, but it helps me kind of wall off things that I don't want spoilers on. Cause I've often am watching, well, most often watching my sports on delay. My whole family has like a text group commenting on the Vikings, and I'm always walking my dog for like 45 minutes before I push play on the DVR because I don't want to sit through commercials. So it takes me like, my mom's like, "Are you caught up yet?" I'm like, "No, by the third quarter I'll probably be caught up, but I'm not gonna, so I don't look at that thread, and I don't. But by the end of the game, I'm live, but not always. Like evening. Obviously, I'm covering wrestling in the evening, so the evening sports during the week, or pay-per-view Sundays and stuff. I don't know either. Anyway.
So are you going to watch the Twins game after we're done, then?
Oh God, I don't even want to. Fortunately, I didn't get super invested in the Twins this year. My mom's a big fan, and it's I don't know. It's like they're falling apart. Well, they are falling apart. I don't know what happened tonight yet. Maybe I'll turn it on.
I can tell you what happened tonight.
Yeah, what if someone? I'm going to tell you what happens on Collision then. All right. So we'll wind back to Dynamite here and bring up what some people think could have been the lead. MVP showing up, interrupting Prince Nana. I thought it was a good segment. I thought MVP's a good talker, and he's got a good presence. He knows his character. I thought it was the best segment Prince Nana's been part of, in part because it acknowledged the obvious, which is, you're drinking coffee and doing the silly dance and all that. And, Swerve could benefit from having a serious person manage his career. I think about when I first started seeing territory wrestling and syndication, and there'd be these managers who were just appendages to wrestlers, and I never got a backstory on them. And so it's not like AEW's, but it's not like AEW is the only people who do it. But Prince Nana showed up, and it's like, you can kind of pick up on their friends. There's a dynamic there. Prince Nana's kind of fun, but at one time he was a heel manager. At the same time, he was a babyface manager, which was weird. On Collision, he was a heel. On Dynamite, he's a babyface. But I thought MVP basically laid out, I might be better for him than you. And I thought Nana showed a little seriousness. Like, it's like what I like about New Day right now. It's like I'm seeing Xavier and Kofi do something other than hoot and, just play this sort of stereotype that Vince McMahon kind of crafted for them. So tell me about what you thought of the segment. Those are some things that jumped out to me.
Yeah, it was a great surprise to see him. I've always enjoyed him as a talker, and so it seemed like the perfect role for him. I think they put a lot of thought into, okay, if we're going to bring him in, what are we going to do with him? Trying to steal Swerve away makes perfect sense. It's true to his character that he's been for the last 5 years or so, since he returned. And yeah, I mean, personally, I could do without anyone else arriving with him. I think if he kind of came in to try to take over and had grabbed some guys and kind of had a serious good stable, I don't need to see Bobby Lashley show up. I don't need to see that Shelton Benjamin show up. I don't, so, but we may get that. But either way, it's a good thing because it adds a little. It's a story. It's going to add some intrigue to Swerve when he comes back. It keeps Swerve a little away from the world title for a little bit. I'm hopeful he gets back, into it in a few months. But for now, you have this story. Maybe he comes in. Maybe when Hobbs is ready to come back, he could join. What that kind of thing. It's like you see where you could build into this kind of very serious stable that, whereas I love the Swerve dance, it's run its course at this point. If it went away, I don't think people would be, oh man, I'm going to stop watching because I can't see the Swerve dance.
Yeah. Yeah. In the chat, King of Strong South says, I mean, to be fair, Swerve had his biggest year with his current manager who led him to be world champion, something he's never done. So we could use that to keep Swerve. Where do you think, I assume Swerve speaks on behalf of Prince Nana and they stay together and he just says, no, you don't understand. Nana's, and actually this is a great opportunity for AEW to actually find, and by the way, this is something I said about when WWF brought Jim Cornette in. Like, I'm not just picking on AEW. When Jim Cornette came in during the Monday Night War, when Vince McMahon was desperate to try to figure something out to combat the forward-leaning younger, Eric Bischoff vision for Nitro, that was kicking his butt for a while. Cornette came in with a tennis racket, and they never explained his character, that he was a mama's boy, grew up privileged, wasn't an athlete, but used mama's money to get in the door, and actually is pretty talented when it comes to taking taking off the plate of his wrestlers, having to book dates and worry about money. He's a good, bargains for matches. He does all the negotiating an agent does, but he's also a camera hog and obnoxious and is someone that fans like to see get beat up when he sticks his nose in matches. Like, there's a way to tell that. They never told it. He just showed up the court with a tennis racket, and there was this sort of assumed knowledge, or we can't be bothered. And I'm for a couple sentences here and there out of the gate and remind people of it and do a little backstory. There's a chance to do that now, to have Swerve come out and explain why he's with Nana. What's their backstory? What does Nana add besides the, oh, isn't it cute to see him dance and people enjoy it? That's sort of being a mascot. Explain why he's not a mascot. Explain his value. This is an opportunity to do it, Gregg, and I hope they do.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And because you don't want Swerve now jumping back heel anyway. So it doesn't seem likely that he would join MVP just because it's been a little back and forth, and people like Swerve now, and you should just stick with that. And he kind of it took a while for him to move over to the babyface side and get cheered and all that. And then he had to kind of play heel again a little bit with the Bryan Danielson feud, which, like, all right, I understand why, but, probably didn't need to. But now he's, back. And so it makes perfect sense, what you said about him, reintroducing Nana. Maybe, yeah, that would be good.
So GWF ESPN 1992 says, I think Nana and MVP both managing Swerve would be awesome if they can pay 5 people to follow Jeff Jarrett around. What's 2 people in Swerve's entourage? I didn't get a sense that's where they're heading, and I don't know that I like that. I think I'd rather see MVP as a heel and Nana and Swerve as a face. And I think, I don't know if Lashley's going to come in or Shelton Benjamin's coming in, or if it'd be Powerhouse Hobbs or someone else entirely. But if do you think Lashley managed by MVP against Swerve with Nana is bad, Gregg, or just not your top choice?
No, it's not bad, and I can certainly see it happening. I don't think they need to bring in Lashley. I don't know. It's like I kind of am ready for them to do more internal, storytelling with the more of their own talent. I mean, most wrestlers now were in WWE at some point for the most part, so if you're bringing anybody new in, the likelihood, so it's not necessarily, another WWE person. That's not necessarily, what I'm saying, but there are, I don't know. Lashley is, the good look and everything like that still, amazingly still, but I kind of want to see some newer, but but if they tell a good story, I can buy in.
Yep. Okay. Let's, a couple chat comments here on this. Ramen Noodle, I think, makes a good point. All rappers need a hype man. It's familiar enough for a certain audience. Nana just works. Yeah. I think there's an inherent fineness about it. It's fine. My point is, make it better than fine. Like, it's okay to add a layer or two to what the dynamic is, what the origin story of Prince Nana is. I mean, maybe you don't want to go back to ROH's origin story. You want to start fresh or something, but give us more than, he's the hype man. Because I think it's just a net positive, I guess is my argument. I mean, why not? But it's not awful. I mean, I understood Paul Number One Jones in the 1980s was an ex-wrestler who now was a manager. I mean, I got that, but I craved more knowledge. But he was also kind of like Mr. Fuji in the end. He was just a guy they were keeping around to give a paycheck to because, they liked him and he had a history with that fan base. So my point is, this isn't new criticism, but wrestling's presentation and booking at its best doesn't just sort of go into cruise control and just let the inertia of an act go. You're always looking for ways to add. You have new viewers, add a new dimension, add new things, remind people of the backstory, especially bring it up when it's relevant, like it is now, I would argue. Michael Frazier says, first time I've seen Prince act like a man tonight. I'm not familiar with him, and I don't really understand why he acts like a man with a mind of a child. To me, he doesn't fit the Swerve character one bit. So, it's an example, and that's who I'm speaking on behalf of. Whether you think it's 8% of the audience or 80%, I don't know, but it's just easy to do. It's easy to go, let's spend some time anytime someone's on TV, making sure at the beginning and periodically, we're doing things to remind people of what they're all about. It doesn't have to boil down to 3 words, but maybe in your mind you want to have a sentence or two that, as a booker, as a promoter, and if you're the wrestler itself, you have a couple sentences in your head that kind of boils down kind of at the core who you are and what you want fans to think of when they think of you. Find creative ways to remind people of that and add that granular detail, so it I think people get more invested then. Greg.
Yeah, and what we saw tonight seems to, show that they're going to go down that road a little bit because of how Nana reacted. It wasn't just he didn't just like look at him and do his dance or whatever. He looked pretty serious, and it looked like, okay, this means war, type of thing between the two of them, and so you might get exactly what you've been asking for.
Yes. All right. Some people are talking about the attendance. In fact, Shay Penn was at the show. No spoilers here. Said still at the show, watching Collision and apparently watching us on your phone. Hello, Shay. I just want to say it was a very fun night. Not as packed as the last 2 Grand Slams. Probably 10K or at least 9K. Tag title match stole the show. Another plug, but in our TV reports at PWTorch.com, we put up WrestleTix's numbers, and I encourage you to, if you crave even more, support WrestleTix. They do a great job if you're into attendance figures. They're on Patreon. You can support them there, and we encourage that. But we throw in the last update that we had when we create the template for our TV show, and we're trying to be better about updating it to be even more up to date at the time of the show, with some help from some readers. But we put that attendance number is up at the top of our TV reports on Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. So another reason to check it out. And WrestleTix reported late this afternoon, 8,191 tickets had been distributed, and they had set up 8,477. That was expanded from around 7,000 a few days ago. But the arena has a capacity of 23,000, and they were a lot closer to filling the stadium during prior Grand Slams. Greg, what do you make of that number? What do you make of the downturn in attendance at Arthur Ashe Stadium?
Yeah, I mean, it's to be expected, just because when you look at week to week, that's just, it's the attendance has been an issue. But I believe, according to WrestleTix, last year's was 11,000 and change. So if they ended up around 8, in that range, then it seemed like the typical drop, of attendance. But it was still impressive that they got, I mean, right now you look what besides what WWE is doing, because they are what they are. And much as you had said a couple times last week, I personally took no offense to AEW being referred to as second tier, because it's just facts. They are at this moment, and it's okay to be second. When you're getting good TV deals and all that. Yes, it could be better and all that, but they, it looked full. What they showed, the cameras did a good job. Once they turned the lights on, because the first 5-10 minutes, it seemed like there was still some empty spots, and they didn't have the lights on behind, which I was ready to be very, very concerned about for the whole rest of the show if they kept it like that. But once they got the lights on, you could see there was a lot of people there. The angles that they showed, there's the one angle that I was watching during the tag title match when they came back from commercial from up above, and it was kind of the pan around where you could see down. Great, shot of seeing a lot of people there. So they've done a good job of showing it, and of course they want more people, and it's up to them to put on a better product. So next year, if they go back there, boom, when you talk about 2 years ago, it was a huge, huge, huge deal there. You're going to have some, it's going to be a little less each time in theory, unless you can turn the product into something that's must see. And right now it's not for enough people to fill the place. But if, they take this new deal and they do what they're supposed to do with it and improve next year, if they go back, maybe you're above 10,000 again or more.
There's WCW had a lot of empty seats in buildings, and then Nitro launched and they started selling out a lot of buildings. The day tickets went on sale. It is not inevitable attendance goes down, but you definitely have an advantage if you're a new company going to a market for the first time or a stadium for the first time. That is absolutely an inherent advantage compared to follow-up visits, especially if you do really well out of the gate. It's hard to match or build on it. But you shouldn't resign yourself. It's like, bookers who are in a down period who say wrestling is inherently cyclical. It's not inherently cyclical. It's cyclical historically because bookers get a little in love with their own ideas and they start riding things out longer than they should. And they aren't willing to take chances when things are going well, which means when things don't go well, they haven't built the foundation to introduce something new to rev things up again. But that's not inevitable. There are bookers who survive cyclicalness or mitigate it greatly because they are planning for the future. There's a lot of teams that just make, like in sports, that make the playoffs almost always. They don't go through an 8-year drought where they're just, they win 1 out of 5 games. Like, you can actually avoid, perpetual mediocrity or be good for a long time. So anyway, yeah, it's a defeatist attitude to say it's inevitable attendance is going to go down. Greg, you're right. If they do things right, whatever right is, but if they do some right things, they can start building an audience again. And I think they have a lot of pieces in place. And I mean, Tony's wrestling knowledge, his enthusiasm, people who are on Tony, just even who are frustrated by him a lot, really like him as a person. Like, I mean, he's a guy based on what we know and what people who are around him know, go like, this is a guy you want to root for to succeed. Like, he's a genuinely really cool, nice person. But it doesn't mean he doesn't drive people mad, and frustrated and who have the best interest of AEW in mind. So, the question is, if this TV deal is done and gets announced, can he exhale and go, okay, I'm not just squeezing the steering wheel, at night when your headlights aren't bright enough and there's fog. I feel like he's sort of in some ways been through so much with Punk and the pandemic and wanting this next TV deal. Jason Paul and I talk about this on the flagship shows every 3 weeks. Does he relax and go, all right, now I can kind of have the bandwidth and the mental energy to look at what's the next phase of my booking story, I guess. I can't think of a better word. Just the story of my booking career. Do I have another new idea to kind of rev things up and take us to a new place? And are there some new people I want to listen to? Because I have the bandwidth to actually listen and not just plow through, with my kind of pet ideas.
Yeah, and the fact that he's got so much on his plate right now, delegating a little bit is very difficult for someone like him. But it would help him to do just that. And I brought it up a little bit on the All Elite Conversation Club last week. But this new deal can go one of 2 ways in my mind. It's like I look at this reported 3-year deal with a possible option, but a 3-year deal as this is his bridge contract, like for an athlete, where an athlete comes in as a rookie and he makes whatever money he's going to make. And if he starts strong, great, he's playing his rookie contract. And then he wants to make the big money, but his play has started to fall off a little bit. So he signs the shorter deal in order to prove himself. So then in the next deal is the big one. And so now it's up. So if he's now satisfied, I got a 3-year deal, yay, it's double what I made before. And then that could be a bad thing. If he takes this as, this is my prove it 3 years, so I can get, triple the next time, that's where you can really see whether they're going to, become what they could become or get back to where they were right at the beginning.
I talked about, people behind the scenes who are maddeningly frustrated with Tony over the years, with for different reasons, who just will swear by him as a person and really like him. But Ramen Noodle says there's something about TK that makes people want to root for him to fail. We have to be honest about that. Sadler version 3 says, Ramen Noodle, that's true. He's completely unlikable to me. And then Zach Barber says, why? Greg, what do you think about that?
I can tell you why, in my opinion, of why. Now, I root for him, I understand, but I've said for months and months and months and months, he needs media training. His media training, he has none. And so when you see him go on these other shows, when you see him go and do his calls before pay-per-views, and sometimes in the the scrums after the pay-per-views, you know what you're getting. You're getting these softball questions. If he doesn't want to answer, he's going to talk for 5 minutes and about all these things and keep going back to plugging. And he's always going to have to mention that he's going to, you can see that on Dynamite, on TBS and TNT and list everything else. And it gets annoying and frustrating because he won't answer like any hard questions. And there are ways to answer hard questions without giving everything away. I likened it to, again, showing my age, former Washington football coach Joe Gibbs back in the day where he won all these Super Bowls in the 80s. And the guy was so entertaining to listen to, and he answered every question, and he said absolutely nothing. But he answered them, and there was a way that he answered them. And so, every time I used to look forward to listening to the Tony Khan calls. Now I can't stand listening to them because it's just the same people asking him to, hype up his show, and it's the same stuff, and everything's great, and everything's, and it's like, you can answer a question, ask about the attendance. He can easily come on and say, you know what? We know the attendance is fallen. It's a struggle, and we're working on all these ways that we can make our shows better, and we can do it. And if he does that kind of rah-rah, people are going to get behind him. But there's this mentality that he has to be right, and everything's going exactly how he planned, and nothing ever goes wrong, and all that stuff. And it just makes it very difficult for, I think, a lot of people to take him seriously, because even when he did the goofy thing at the draft where he was wearing his neck brace, he had that, it was like, I think that was a good idea to do that because it got people talking. But then he goes on the NFL Network and just starts becoming like promoter guy the whole time. And it's like, you had him and then you blew it. So that's, I think, media training a lot is why people, root against him. Some people do.
By the way, next week on the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling podcast feed, our 5 years ago flashback interview is my interview with Tony Khan. I think it was the day before Dynamite's debut. He gave me a one-on-one interview, and he, talked about Dynamite. And so I think to this day, it's one of the better interviews I've heard him do. I'll just say that. And
I remember it. I listened to it.
Yeah. And so, it's going to be interesting for me to listen back. I haven't listened back to it. In obviously years and years, well, I should say obviously, but in years and years, I haven't listened back to it at all. So I'm curious, like, it's like, so, like when you have a niece you haven't seen in 4 years, you're like, oh my God, you're like a different person. Like how much listening back to an interview on the eve of Dynamite, is that going to seem like a different person or largely the same person? And so anyway, that's something for people to look forward to. And I encourage everybody to look for that next week and search Wade Keller and subscribe to the Blue Logo Show if you're interested in that. That's an example of our podcast exclusive content if you're someone discovering us on YouTube.
If you see clips of Tony, clips of Tony, before shows and all the hype that he comes out and he gets to addresses the crowd, it's like that's the Tony that, yes, he's hyped and trying to hype everybody up and all that, but you see the fan that he is. And so that's the likable part of him, why people like him. And again, I'm rooting for him. I've just been around the media for so long. I can see these things where I was like, let me help you, let me help you, because I think you can come across so much better than he does sometimes. So, there's no doubt that he's a huge fan and he's, loves it and is putting his all into it and is a good guy. Just, there are things he needs to improve upon.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So also on tonight's show, we had the retirement of the FTW Championship. We mentioned the Hook promo earlier. I liked Hook. I liked hearing his accent, and he talked like a real person, a wrestler. I thought he was going to announce he was retiring as a wrestler, which is weird. Like some people just are like, it's been fun. It's not for me. I want to go play lacrosse or be an accountant. I mean, whatever, And but I largely knew he was talking about the FTW title, but part of me was like, is this even bigger than that? I thought it was a cool, touching moment. That they kind of like, you'd have to be. I don't know. I don't want to insult people, but to not have figured out Taz is his dad, even though they don't like explicitly say it, but it's sort of like everybody knows it, is how they've treated it from the beginning. They're kind of cute about it at the beginning, and then they sort of gave up on that. But they don't just go, Taz, your son is wrestling tonight. Like they don't say that ever, or maybe ever. And tonight it was just like very open, and I thought the hug was cool, and they followed, Taz followed up in the next match talking about his, it's a good thing I'm wearing sunglasses because I was tearing up. I thought it was cool. And, I think it's good the FTW title is going away. They can bring it back someday, but, it was a little extra, Greg, unneeded extra.
Yeah, and I think it opens up Hook now to kind of take the next step up. Like I had wanted him to, I thought he found a good spot when he was with Samoa Joe earlier in the year. And then when Samoa Joe had to leave to shoot his TV show, it kind of, he kind of lost it a little bit. He kind of still needs some help, and being still green and all that. But I thought he did a great job. The match was good. I think he worked well with Roddy Strong, as most people do, and it was a good emotional moment there. You had the all in hug, which was nice when Taz kind of got up to help, and I really enjoyed that. But this was kind of a little more like, here you go, Dad. This is your legacy, your thing. I'm gonna give it back to you. I don't need to be defined by it anymore. Whatever it is, you got the hug. I was like, yeah, I got hit in the feels.
What do you make of the friendly, good loser that Roderick Strong turned out to be and his crew? What's going on there?
I'm just happy that wasn't another one of those, swerve deals where they had to do something and Hook falls for it, and then he has to be saved, and it starts. It's like that was because I was just kind of waiting for it, and then even when Hook turned around to like go back out, I was just looking to make sure was he gonna, but no, it was nice. And people I think respect Roddy Strong as a good wrestler, a good guy for the most part, despite being in the group that he's in, which again I feel bad for him because it was supposed to be much more of a group, and he's not really the leader of the group type, but when Adam Cole got hurt, it kind of ruined that group from the start. So, but yeah, I mean, if he goes kind of more of a baby face from now on, great. If he doesn't and stays the heel and just kind of works in the mid card, okay, that works for me too.
Well, Taven and Bennett kind of nodding and giving respect to him too. I mean, is it a ploy to they're going to stay heel, but kind of lure Hook into their web and try to corrupt him, and then Samoa Joe comes and saves the day when he's back? I mean, I don't know. I'm still suspicious. I don't think Strong, Taven, and Bennett are suddenly going to become baby faces because they respect that Hook beat Strong fair and square. But 27 Newsman says they're trying to recruit Hook to their lame faction to replace Adam Cole. It's a built-in feud when Cole returns. What do you, by the way, just Greg, what do you think of Hook? Like, if you're Tony Khan, how do you view him at this point after what the range of things we've seen with him, including one of his better matches tonight, unquestionably?
Yeah, I think, he's certainly improved in the ring. He kind of looks more comfortable in there, which is great. You kind of put him in with some really good workers, so that helps him. Getting him more and more practice. He's one of those guys where I kind of think, when they got rid of Dark and they got rid of some other things, some of these younger, greener wrestlers, it's not good for them. They don't get the reps. They don't get the mic reps. They don't get all these things that they could get on some of these dark show type of, of shows where you could just continue to get reps and reps and reps wrestling in front of people. And so he's one of those where it's been a slow go, I think, a lot because of that. Yes. And so now he's getting some more experience. He's looking better in the ring. I think putting him with Samoa Joe when Samoa Joe gets back would be a smart move, where they can kind of, because who better than Samoa Joe to learn how to not only talk seriously, not yell into the mic or anything like that. There's no one better, Samoa Joe and Moxley just staring serious, like, into the camera they're the best, I think, by far, where you just, you believe every, moment and so I think he's on his way, but I think, he peaked really high at the beginning, and then it just, he just needed to get the reps, and slowly but surely he's starting to get those reps.
Yeah. All right, let's jump to a couple emails and then we'll wrap up. Zach, who's been with us in the chat, did email. He goes, I've got so many thoughts swirling around in my head. I thought overall it was a strong show. Bryan and Nigel had a really good match. Nigel did not look like a guy who hasn't wrestled a singles match in 13 years. Sometimes you just have to forget the build that came before it and just enjoy the wrestling in front of you. And I definitely nerded out. Nigel saying thank you as he tugged at the heartstrings. I hope he got the closure and the redemption he wanted. The tag team match was excellent. You want me emotionally invested, Wade? Well, I was emotionally invested in the Bucks losing the titles because I'm tired of them and their refusal to take anything seriously. So that finish frustrated me, even if there's logic to it. That main event, though, my body hurts for Darby. But but the outcome did not surprise me. I suspect Mox beats Bryan at Wrestle Dream, and maybe we get the debut of Shane McMahon. That'd make both of you happy. Anything you want to respond to there, Greg?
Just the tag title match. I loved every second of that. I mean, I thought that was so well done. I had not been on the edge of my seat for near falls like that in a while. Like there were some really great near falls in that where I was really thinking, they could give Ospreay and Fletcher the titles, and I was. And so I was loving that. And my son, by the way, who has gone to events when I took him when he's a kid. He's almost 18 now, so he's kind of in that I'm too cool to watch on a regular basis, guy. But he said he was actually in here, sat and watched that match with me, and he was just wowed by Ospreay and wowed by Fletcher and that kind of stuff. Yeah. He was like, wow, that's really good stuff.
And Tony Schiavone said only in AEW. You're only going to see this in AEW. And I mean, some people go, that's a compliment. Others go, it can be interpreted more than one way because you loved it, but the Young Buck style isn't everybody's style. Move. But the athleticism
I get it.
is fantastic.
What Ospreay can do, I mean, even though I saw it last week, that's like springboard on the ropes into the power bomb move again. The power, just fantastic. But Oscar, everything that he does, and Fletcher's not that far behind him. So I mean, you have two guys who can just be. These are your guys over the next 3 years. That you're talking about this new contract and what you're going to build. You grab Ospreay to be your number one guy. You have Fletcher could possibly be his number one rival. The matches they could put together, against each other would be fantastic. I am tired of the screwdriver. I think that's kind of, if you're going to have a weapon, that's not one to have, you're going to literally kill somebody with it. I do love Callis though on commentary when he's talking about, because he does this a lot, at least the last handful of weeks that he's been on there, of talking about strategy. When he's on there, it makes it seem very real. Where he's talking about, we were talking about this in the back or before in our preparation, and we were discussing how to, get out of this move and reverse this one and all that. And I love when the commentators can add that to it because it gives it more of a sports-like, feel to it, which is what I enjoy. So I thought that was and also the Ospreay entrance. Is just the number one entrance for me, right now. I mean, I love just because it stings you, right? Like there's no build up to it. There's no, it's just like dun 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 dun. It's like boom. It grabs your attention. You're into it. You're ready, and then he's down there, and you're ready to start chanting and all that. I just think they hit a home run with that whole presentation.
Where does this go? The Ospreay and Fletcher, they looked at each other with mutual frustration, maybe for different reasons after the loss. I mean, if you're going to have, let's set aside that it was a screwdriver. The story is Ospreay didn't want Fletcher to use a weapon, not because he didn't want to win, but he didn't think he should want to win that way. They're old friends. That's established. That's why they even agreed to this match in the first place, because there's such a history between Ospreay and Fletcher, and Ospreay owed one to Don Callis. So where do they go? Like, does this lead to a revved up Fletcher Ospreay feud, or does this turn Fletcher away from Callis, and then Callis has two members of his faction go after them, but Ospreay's got singles matches to worry about? So does Fletcher split off? I mean, what do you think?
I think a few weeks ago, or it was like a month ago, Fletcher seemed to be kind of inching away from Callis and onto Ospreay. And then this reaction made me think that he's more, because he was more than willing to use the weapon.
Yeah.
And then he had the look afterwards like, come on, man, use the weapon. Who cares? Like, because it wasn't, he didn't grab and use the weapon until there was a couple of those really close near falls where the frustration was there, and Callis was like, we can't beat him, because that keeps, kicking out of these ridiculous moves. So we have to do something else. And so, that made perfect sense to me. And then now it seems that they're going in a way where it's going to be Ospreay and Fletcher at odds. I just kind of wish they didn't have that match a few months ago where they had saved it. But it seems that this will probably be the last straw of Ospreay associated with Callis in any way, because Callis will blame him and say we could have had it if you just let him do it, and then maybe he has people attack him. But the fact that Ospreay kind of went through the whole Callis family at the beginning, months ago, that's kind of a bummer, because I think if they could have saved it, it would have made a little more sense.
Little discussion going on about the screwdriver in the chat room. 27 Newsman says, what's the plan when you actually get the screwdriver? Ramen Noodle says they've used a screwdriver like 20 times now. You stab a guy in the head or eye with it. It hurts, but the victim doesn't die. LOL, this isn't hard to understand. That's very hard to understand, Ramen Noodle. If you get stabbed in the eye with a screwdriver, you are not going to be okay. So what it means is they're not really stabbing you with a screwdriver, because if you get stabbed in the eyeball with a screwdriver, you no longer have an intact eyeball. So it's stupid, because it's not believable. It's why Triple H never hit anyone with a sledgehammer. He jabbed him with it, but when he swung, they always ducked. Don't introduce a weapon that you can't actually use in the way that you would use it if you're fighting for your life against a home invasion. It's stupid. It's just super easy to edit, curate, edit that out. Don't do it. And I do not understand how you can be in the business as long as Don Callis has and be as smart in certain ways as he's been and think, screwdriver, why has no one thought of that? I'm going to introduce that. You know why? Because every smart person thought of it, and then they all realized it'd be stupid to use it in pro wrestling, because you can't actually use it, because the effect won't be what would really happen in real life. Same thing. And Triple H, super smart. But sledgehammer, I mean, it became his gimmick, but I also think it became a bit of a burden. Greg.
Yeah, the way the Fletcher was holding the screwdriver was right at the top of the handle, so the entire spike of it and sharp would have been. It's like, how are you going to do that? If they were going to do something where they kind of hold it down by the end and they kind of dig it into the forehead to get them to bleed or something, that makes more sense. Yeah. Sort of, like a fork or the whatever they're going to type of things, the weapons that they use. Abdullah the Butcher would have enjoyed, using a screwdriver in that way. But yeah, I mean, that there's other ways to do that and cheat and have a weapon, and a very, very, very sharp, pointed object is not it.
Yeah. It says no one got a "you still got a" chant from the crowd tonight. Everybody should apologize. That is, I mean, I'm happy about that. Nigel did not get a "you still got a" chant. Maybe he's hurt by that, but he should be proud that people were into the match and not into a patronizing chant. Okay. JB in Detroit. We'll race through some topics. It'll probably hit some areas we haven't, and then we'll probably wrap up there. Was it a good idea to fake the crowd out by delaying Danielson's entrance to his traditional music and have him come out to Final Countdown? I don't think most people truly thought Danielson wouldn't show up for the match, but was a potential secondary pop worth it? There was a lot of sort of extra going on here, Greg, with a lot of this, will he or won't he? I mean, everybody assumed he was going to wrestle. So what did you get out of saying he might not? And what did you get out of not having a doctor announcement, say on Monday, get circulated on Twitter, and then open the show with Excalibur excitedly saying Danielson was cleared 48 hours ago and he is going to wrestle, and have him come out? Like, what is this Swerve? What do you gain from the fake out there? It's done. It's like the word, the vitriol meter. By the way, I think I won on that. People stopped saying vitriol. Now we'll see, but I feel like maybe calling attention, not that the word is bad. It just was in wrestling, but it was overused so much. And now it's
overused.
Overused, and it lost its punch. Same thing with swerves. Same thing with, it's like, you're not fooling anybody. So why do it? Just be more straightforward when you can. Greg.
Yeah, it was just silly to have that start the show, because you could have easily had, nothing happen and then Nigel decide to try to get a count out win or something like that. Like, you didn't have to have why would they play the music? There's no reason why they would play it and have no one come out. It doesn't make sense, other than to just kind of do a Swerve thing, but you know he's coming eventually. So yeah, it just made no sense for them to do it. But
yeah.
But again, it was also 10 seconds or 15 seconds of the show. So it's not like I'm going to, rant rave about it. Just silly.
JB from Detroit says, one thing I find that AEW does better than most is in-match storytelling. Where that showed itself most tonight was in the Bryan Nigel match, with Danielson's forearm numbness pain being a huge factor several times. It works even better when he needs to utilize the label lock. A tertiary story was Nigel's conditioning after 13 years without a singles match. Greg, any thoughts on that?
No, I do think they try very hard to try to tell stories in their matches like that. And it does, and that's one of the reasons why you get a little longer matches than maybe some people would like or make sense. But they try hard to do that as almost every match, obviously, other than their squashes. But and I appreciate that. I appreciate it because having it make sense.
I didn't mind Christian teasing a cash-in for the AEW title after the Danielson-Nigel match, but I could have done without the comedy spot with Kip Sabian stealing Christian's pen. They should have let the huge amount of Nigel's first match in over a decade breathe and not convolute it with a comedy mid-carder like Sabian. I think they think, oh, we had a big audience here, so now we want to... you're showing off that there can be more than one pen?
I got lots of pens here.
Yes.
So if someone steals one pen, I'm sure someone else has another pen. For him, it's like, why you have to go chase after him? I got 6 pens in my hand right now.
Yeah. I agree. Letting a match like that just breathe. Just let that be enough. Why would Claudio and Pac be defending Danielson? Is it because they want Mox to be the one to take the title off of him?
Yeah, is that what the story what it was going to be? I didn't understand really, other than just establishing the fact that they were there. Is that why when Christian runs back, they just happen to be standing there? It wasn't. I don't know. I didn't. That one went over my head.
I don't think they were protecting Danielson. I think that they happened to be standing there, and what they did is plant a seed that Christian wants a title shot, but Moxley wants to earn one and wants to be first in line, and it was sort of their way of showing Christian as, kind of a chicken shit heel number one contender or not number one contender, but somebody with a shot, who is intimidated and doesn't want to mess with whatever Moxley's plan is. But, I don't think it was to defend Danielson because it was more happenstance, I think. Yeah. All right. Tonight's retiring of the FTW title was unironically extremely well done. That's what we want more of. That's what we mean. Like Nigel had his last match. Just focus on him. Don't do Christian coming out with a thing and Kip Sabian. While the title probably lasted way too long at AEW, its final night felt like it mattered, and it was truly a touching moment between father and son that resonated with their hometown fans. With members of the Callis family seemingly leaning more face in recent weeks, is there any way Callis breaks away and aligns with the Elite in opposition of his former family? The family, as of its original incarnation, is dead for all intents and purposes, so this would seem to make sense. Greg, what do you think about that? Does it give Callis something to do, and would that be a good, matchup?
I would say. I mean, I don't know. Callis has been in a weird spot for months and months and months, and so he can be utilized in such a better way. And the way they've done with his family, where they often lose all their big matches, and there isn't a whole lot to it. I think it would be fine if he went over to the Elite. Trying to think of, is there any things that would contradict that? I mean, Takeshita would have to go his own way at that point, because he has a thing with Okada now, and it would make sense with Omega when Omega comes back, because then Omega's now out of the Elite, so that would make sense. So I could see that happening.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I'm very intrigued with the power struggle between MVP and Nana as to who will manage Swerve moving forward. That dynamic has a lot of potential. That being said, I'm not sure which manager would be heel or face in this situation, as I think that MVP's promo contained both elements. Interesting. I was watching MVP through the lens of him being a heel. Do you think that I could rewatch it and see it through a different lens?
Well, I think that's why it was well done, because there is an element of truth in there where he's saying exactly facts. He's pointing out that Swerve did have a great year, but has struggled recently, and he's the guy who can help him out Nana's expense, and people seem to like Nana. So I certainly think he was going heel there, but the best heels also there's an element of truth in there, especially in their own heads.
And then he adds, MVP made a point of talking business with Swerve. Is that a reference to somehow reforming Hurt Business in AEW with Swerve as a leading figure for the group? Would we be in favor of that or not? What are the pros and cons? I mean, the chat room is saying we've seen enough WWE rehashes in AEW and we don't need more of them. I think you can pick and choose. I don't think you should have a hard and fast rule against it, but I don't know that Hurt Business worked particularly well in WWE, but it had a cool factor. But it's not like you're acquiring, the Shield or the Bloodline or even Judgment Day if you do that. So if you're AEW, you look like you're kind of taking, just things that got discarded and didn't click.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could get behind it if you are going to bring someone like Lashley in and you're going to do something similar, but then you fill it with some of the other AEW guys like the Powerhouse Hobbs. I don't know. I know he's probably still a ways away from returning from his injury, but somebody like that where you're it's not the exact same group that you used to see, because that kind of can just scream WWE rehash here. We're going to try it again here and see if it's any different, But if you can kind of mix it up a little bit and take some of the best of AEW and add it to, one, maybe two at the most of the other group, I think you could do something with it.
It said he wasn't talking about Nigel not getting you still got a chant, but he's something about the Bucks. But I ran with it anyway, and it was a good topic, even if it's not what you intended, it. All right. I think that Toni Storm will ultimately win the AEW Women's title back, Cub Grand Slam, Australia in February. In the meantime, I could see both Willow and Mina carrying two feuds of decent length to keep Mariah hot until we get to the December-January timeframe when Toni re-enters the title picture. Greg, this is an open-ended question to talk about what they did tonight with Mariah May and Shirakawa. Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, I've been a fan of Mariah May and what they've done with her from the start. I think that she's kind of has all the pieces that you want for a champion, where she's a great in-ring wrestler. She's pretty good on the mic. She has the look, the presence, the facial expressions, everything to kind of play the character she wants to play. And I did kind of, the first thing I thought of when Willow came out, I was like, okay, that would be an interesting feud. Willow kind of is coming off a bunch of losses, though, so I was kind of hoping she could get built back up a little bit before she starts going after the title. But, I'm sure they'll give her some wins and start that. But I did really enjoy Mariah running over to Mina and kind of putting her in the middle of it and being so happy to see her and all that. That was intriguing enough to kind of now, Mina can be caught and with, my friend, but my friend's kind of a jerk. So what do I do? And so, yeah, I think that's good. I think it'll get there and fill the time before, you have a return possibly of Toni Storm. Although, it wouldn't shock me if Toni Storm comes back and it doesn't necessarily jump right back into a Mariah May, storyline. You could save that.
All right. Couple follow-ups of the chat on the Hurt Business topic. Sadler version 3 says Hurt Business had potential until Vince made Shelton and Cedric useless jobbers, so Lashley was the only relevant wrestler. Ramen Noodle says from MVP's point of view, Nana is undignified. That's a babyface stance to a lot of black fans who loved the way Hurt Business was uncharacteristically presented in WWE. So yeah, good feedback there. Mm-hmm. So back to JB's email. The Jack Perry on his bus vignette as he arrives at Grand Slam over the Brooklyn Bridge gives Dark Knight Gotham the Crow vibes. Very gothic and well done. I love the aesthetic. They're trying to go down the Georgia Tech Stadium route with Cody and Roman with some of the cinematography tonight. It's fine. I thought they did a nice job with what they had to work with inside the stadium and did some good exterior shots. And I would love to see them, carry over and do that. It's Tony's not a guy with a real artistic eye for that kind of thing. That's been pretty clear over time. That's not a priority for him, but and now that WWE's done everything I suggested for 5 years, AEW do. Once they went in the concourse, showed people at the concession stand on Smack. Was it Ron Monday? I guess it wasn't. I think it was Ron Monday. And I've always been an advocate for AEW letting people at home vicariously, kind of feel like they're at the building, show people going in the building and the concourse, whatever. And you see it in watch, the Timberwolves, they Timberwolves games, NBA games, you see fans in the concourse, you see fans excitedly walking into the building, getting their digital tickets on their phone. Like, I love that. It makes me sitting at home feel a little vicariously like I'm there. And it's just, WWE's doing a good job with it. Lee Fitting and the new post Kevin Dunn era is good. And AEW shouldn't be shy about catching up, and they can find some creative things. But tonight was a step in the right direction, but they had a lot to work with, with a better looking stadium than a lot of venues they run at.
Yeah. And like I said, that one angle during the Bucks match was very cool. They've utilized more of those in recent times, which is great. And similarly, like you were saying, when I was covering the Detroit Lions in the playoffs last year, and one of our pregame shows, we made sure we had a camera right by the door when they finally let people in, so we could kind of double box and show people coming in so excited as the doors
You mean
open.
split screen?
You can't.
You mean picture in picture?
You call it a picture in picture? Yeah.
No, I'm joking.
You call it a double box in our.
That's what I call it, and that's what it is. Yeah. Excalibur should change his wording,
but it just allows you to kind of see what's going on, how excited people are, and get you a little FOMO and all that, and you're just like, okay, you want to be there. So yeah, I definitely agree, and I think they've improved a little bit, but there's still a long way to
go. JB says, I'm actually surprised that Darby lost this title shot, particularly because Wrestle Dream is in his home state. What does Darby do at Wrestle Dream? I can't imagine he'll be left off the card. Perhaps something with him and Pac. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, that makes sense. Him and Pac, or him and Claudio, or did he already? I'm trying to think of the last time he fought Claudio, when it was. But yeah, I mean, that would make sense. I really think we're going to find out something over the next few months or something like that to explain a little bit why things seem to be rushed or whatever for these couple of weeks or months or something, just because if there's something going on with Danielson where they have him for a shorter amount of time as they thought or something. I'm just trying to think of reasons why, because it would have made perfect sense to have Darby and Danielson here and then save the Moxley match for Full Gear or whatever, and kind of make it go a little bit longer. But maybe I'm just convinced there's something else going on that caused them to have to pivot a little bit.
Yeah. The fact that the fans are chanting Yuta in response to evening the numbers when BCC attacked Danielson as he strangled Mox is a good sign for Yuta. It proves there is certainly some investment there.
Yeah, I was excited to hear that. I didn't think he'd be coming out, because I kind of knew, because he's supposed to have that 6-man match in the collision portion of it.
Where even if people try to suffocate your best friend, you still have an obligation to defend meaningless trios titles, because he's a man of honor. I mean, that's top 20 dumb things in AEW right now.
Yuta is clearly rattled by the whole thing, as you could tell. He's forgetting shows. He's forgetting his belt in the back. He's going through a lot of stress right now. So these are guys he thought there were or his friends. But I said it before. He's come a long way, because his acting during that turn where Pac had him in the corner, and I thought that was so well done of his reaction to what they were doing, Danielson, and all of a sudden just shocked look on his face and then trying to get at it I thought was a very good sign. And people like him, so I'm hopeful that they can kind of build this into something good for Yuta, because if he's going to be the one left out, and then Danielson's going to go into mostly retirement, and then he's out, then he's going to have to do something on his own. And so if he can get something people behind him and kind of get more fan love, then he can probably do a lot better as a single or whatever he's going to do if he's going to be outside of this group.
Yeah, obviously he's respected by people who don't respect everybody, and for good reason. And it's just a matter of finding a niche with a quirky personality traits and some bad acting early on, and now there's something is catching on, so go with it. Finally, Collision looks particularly stacked for this Saturday. I'm curious as to what the ratings will look like, as it seems like it's been some time since this investment and thought has been put into Collision. I mean, it's hard to not put thought into it. It's sort of the leftover matches in certain ways, and I tell you what, if they have a bigger audience tonight, and we discussed maybe they will, maybe they won't, but even if they don't, it was not a great job hyping Collision. Like there was whatever they're going to have on Collision on Saturday, the fan who isn't online and looking at, I don't know that they did a lot to get people excited. I mean, at the end, they kind of, threw some things out there, but I think coming in and out of commercial breaks, they could have, or in between matches, they could have done a little more. You don't have to do a whole segment, but just something more.
You had the conglomeration promo.
Yeah.
That they did to do it. They had the Jack Perry, bus coming or truck or whatever coming. Those are the two that stood out to me, to kind of saying this is happening on the Collision. That might have been it. I'm trying to think with my notes, probably, but and then they put on the graphics obviously the whole time. It's clear to me, watching it, that it's like, oh, this is a Collision worth watching. It's a lot. I mean, it's 10 times better than it's been for the most part over the past months, and I watch it, but I go in watching it just like, okay, I'm going to turn it on and kind of, chill out and keep an eye on it and maybe look at my phone, while I'm doing it. But this will be one where it's got a lot more of my attention, because, you're going to see Okada, I mean, even though it's Okada and Sammy Guevara and you kind of know where it's going, that'll be an entertaining match to watch. And some of the other matches should be fun. So, I don't know if it's going to lead to better ratings. You're talking about another, is it Alabama, Georgia plays, I think, Saturday night, I think.
You're asking the wrong person, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's a really big college football game, so you're not going to, it is what it is on a Saturday night. I'm curious to see when they get this new deal, whether they're going to switch nights for Collision, which would make sense.
There's not a lot of open nights. Yeah. I mean, I was bracing for a lot of changes in days of the week.
Give you your Saturday nights back. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. Well, I'm not always watching Collision live on Saturday night. Sometimes it's, Sunday and Monday. I was bracing, a year ago for maybe some changes. Maybe USA wants SmackDown on Thursdays again. Maybe Raw doesn't want to be on Monday night, so they move to Tuesday or Wednesday, and then AEW's got to shift to Tuesday, and the CW's like, we'll put NXT on Sunday night. I mean, nothing happened. I mean, I don't know. So it's kind of nice. It's just everything is just the same. But yeah, we'll see with the new AEW deal. If anything, like you said, with Collision, maybe changes if they want to do something different with that. All right, very good. Greg, anything else you wanna add?
No, I think they've got it. I think that's it. And I'm going to stick with that. I'm not going to
like everybody else. Yes. Yeah. All right. Very good. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget, like this show, comment below, and subscribe to our channel. And I know I disparage social media over and over again, but if you are willing to say, hey, there's a good show I watched from beginning to end, and it's a cool approach to covering wrestling that I enjoy and you might too, spread the word. Every little bit helps. Greg, we look forward to your hits and misses. And
yes, I will be writing that up probably tomorrow. It's a little late now on the Eastern time zone there, so I'll probably get that to you tomorrow. Late morning after. Fair.
Okay. Totally good. I totally understand. And then check out the AEW Conversation Club. Joel off for 3 weeks. Is he going to miss? Is it 3?
Yeah, apparently him getting married is more important than sitting and talking to me for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
We are working on the replacement host for this week, which we hope to have finalized sometime tomorrow.
Cool. So I'll just close with a plug for VIP membership. I will be talking a lot about the Vince McMahon Netflix documentary, and it'll be a lot of VIP exclusive content. And the Wade Keller hotline that I recorded right before Dynamite with about 30 minutes of my reaction to part 1. The Vince McMahon's childhood, his relationship with his dad. I checked with somebody who knows. Actually, 2 people who say that was true. Like the stories he told about his dad. Like that's not embellishing or anything. It's so hard because you have to what would I say 3 years ago about this, and do I have to say something completely different about this chapter of Vince's life because of what's alleged now and everything. So it's just like you kind of catch yourself going, who cares what his relationship with his dad was? He's this sexual predator monster, according to this credible lawsuit and a lot of evidence. But my reaction to all that, the whole part 1 and the amazing time to live through for me, the territory system crumbling as Vince McMahon Jr. expanded aggressively. I have thoughts on how important was Hulk Hogan. Dave Meltzer said he was essential, and Vince it wouldn't have worked if not for him. And also, would wrestling have gone national, or would the territories have abided by their long-standing borders if it weren't for Vince McMahon being aggressive. So it's not just a recap of what happened, but it's also some of my opinions on some of the big topics that different people had opinions on. And I also evaluated the sound bites. You know, who was a star of the sound bites, who was full of it. And I'll be doing that for the entire Netflix series on Vince McMahon in coming days. So that's just one reason to go VIP. PWTorch.com/go VIP. You'll get an ad-free version of all our free shows where the commercial breaks just skip right past the breaks, so you don't get the in-house plugs and the digital inserts from our sponsors. So that's a perk, and then you get a bunch of VIP exclusive podcasts, plus with a full VIP membership, access to 35 plus years of back issues going back to the late 1980s, hundreds of retro radio shows from the 90s, an ad-free version of our website, mobile and desktop, 1,800 plus back issues of the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter, lots of cool stuff. So go VIP. You can try 7 days free of our VIP podcast on Patreon, which also is compatible, by the way, with Spotify. If you're a Spotify user, get a 7-day free trial at patreon.com/PWTorchVIP. Patreon.com/PWTorchVIP, or get a whole overview of everything at PWTorch.com/GoVIP. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. Thanks again, Gregg. Thanks to our listeners. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to our emailers. And we will talk to you Friday after SmackDown.